Today we're going to be talking about cell membranes. And cell membranes are selectively permeable. That means some substances can cross the cell membrane and other substances cannot. Because of this, we can create a different environment inside the cell than outside the cell. And that is the foundation of all life. So let's see how the cell membrane actually accomplishes this task. We're going to start by drawing the cell membrane. And the cell membrane is made up of phospholipids. In fact, it's made up of a phospholipid bilayer. So let's go ahead and draw some phospholipids. We're going to start by drawing a round circle, which stands for the phosphate head group, and two long squiggly tails, which are going to represent the fatty acid tails. It's a bilayer, so I'm going to draw two layers of these phospholipids. We're also going to add some proteins, and I'm going to put those in there right now. And we'll add some cholesterol and more fatty acid. Cholesterol is on both sides of the cell membrane. Another protein. And there we go. That's our cell membrane. We're going to start with the phosphate head. This is very polar, so I'm going to go ahead and label that as polar. Same thing down here, very polar. And these are the fatty acid tails. They are very non-polar. So I'm going to write non-polar. Because the non-polar aspect of the cell membrane is so much larger than the polar aspect, overall, the cell membrane is going to be very non-polar, or hydrophobic. So let's go ahead and write that down. Hydrophobic, or non-polar overall. Now that's going to be very important because polar substances or hydrophilic substances are not going to be able to easily cross the cell membrane. For example, glucose, sodium ions, potassium ions, calcium ions are not going to be able to get across the cell membrane. When they try, they're not going to be able to make it through this large nonpolar region. So they're going to end up getting rejected. So they're going to have to look for a different way in the cell. And that way is a transport protein. So let's go ahead and label this as a transport protein. Transport proteins are going to allow certain substances to move in and out of the cell. However, there is a caveat. Transport proteins are very, very specific. They don't allow anything to move through them. They are not hollow tubes. So let's write very specific. So if a glucose molecule is going to move through this transport protein needs to be specific for that glucose molecule. And if it is, that means that a sodium ion or a calcium ion could not also move through that transport protein. If sodium ions or potassium ions want to get into this cell, they will have to find their own respective transport proteins. Over here we have another protein. This is going to be referred to as a cell recognition protein. I'm sorry, a cell receptor protein. So this is a cell receptor protein. And like its name implies, it receives messages from other cells in the body. So let's go ahead and write that down. Receives messages from other cells. And the way it does this is by binding molecules, messengers that other cells produce that are transported through the bloodstream and then end up attaching to this cell. So this cell receptor protein right here is specific for different types of messengers. For example, if this is an insulin molecule right here, insulin would only attach to its own respective insulin cell receptor protein. And once it did, it would then cause the cell membrane to do something that it wasn't doing before. Other messengers would have to bind to their respective cell receptor proteins. Each cell has a different variety of cell receptor proteins, which allows it to respond to different messages. One way that a cell wouldn't respond to a message is if it didn't have a specific cell receptor protein. And because of that, it just wouldn't respond to a particular message. Now let's move on to this structure right here. This is going to be cholesterol. So let's go ahead and write cholesterol. Take that and eat. Cholesterol. Cholesterol is a fat, but a very important fat, especially in animal cell membranes. And only animal cell membranes are going to have cholesterol. And cholesterol regulates membrane fluidity or flexibility. So cholesterol is going to be responsible for making this membrane fluid or more rigid. This is going to be very important. Now the last protein we're going to talk about is this guy right here. This protein is referred to as a cell recognition protein. And like its name implies, it allows the immune system to recognize the cells of the body. So let's go ahead and write that down. Allows immune cells to recognize self, meaning the body. This protein right here allows the immune cells, the white blood cells, as they move through the body, to recognize whether this cell is part of us or not, or whether it's a germ or foreign. Germs will have their own cell recognition proteins. However, the shape of their cell recognition proteins will be different. And in fact, every person has their own unique cell recognition proteins. So if I was to get a liver transplant from somebody else, that liver would contain foreign cell recognition proteins, and my body would attack it because it would feel that it was foreign. The same thing goes for germs. Germs have their own cell recognition proteins. And because of that, when my immune cells are moving around the body, if they see an antenna or a cell recognition protein that looks different from mine, has a different shape, they will view it as foreign and they will try to destroy it. And that is how cells, or the body, can tell if your cells actually are part of your body or whether a cell in your body is foreign or not. That's it for cell membranes.